Hello, my name is Steve.
Eric, and my name is Jonathan Park.
We are from the ICI, which is a group of young teenagers who talk about Korea's culture and history to foreign people. Today we are at the Cheongdeokgung Palace. Let's get started.
Hi, my name is Eric, and now I'm going to explain you about the history of the Cheongdeokgung Palace. Cheongdeokgung Palace was originally built for the purpose of secondary palace. However, there was a Japanese invasion in 1592. At the time, the palaces at the capital was all burned, which is including this palace and main palace, which is Gyeongbokgung Palace. So, after the king came back, there was no palace for king to stay. So, they must rebuild the Gyeongbokgung Palace. However, the Gyeongbokgung Palace was too big and it cost too much to rebuild that palace. And cause it was right after the war, the finance of the government was not very large. So instead of rebuilding the Gyeongbokgung Palace, they rebuilt this secondary palace, which is Cheongdeokgung Palace, and used it as a main palace. Now, let's move to see UNESCO World Heritage. As I mentioned, Cheongdeokgung Palace was designated as UNESCO World Heritage. That's because the Cheongdeokgung Palace is built with the harmony with nature and has a beautiful a beautiful back garden. Also, the buildings at the Cheongdeokgung Palace is very old.
We are at the Changdeok Palace, and this is the main gate of the Changdeok Palace. It is the oldest among the five gates in the Joseon Dynasty, and it was built in 1412. As you can see, it is a two-story pavilion building, and at the second floor there is a big bell. The big bell was rung 33 times at 4 a.m., which meant the end of curfew. You could walk along the city freely. And at 10 p.m., it was rung 28 times, which meant the start of curfew, and you couldn't go anywhere. The bell was kind of like a clock to the Joseon people. And as you can see, this main gate has 5 doors, while all the other palace main gates only have 3 doors. At this period, only the emperor of the China could have a 5-door main gate. But to show the consciousness of independence of the Joseon king, they built a 5-door main gate. But because of the China's tacit influence, they had to close 2 doors down. Now let's go to the next spot, the stone bridge. We are at the Forbidden Bridge of the Changdeok Palace. And as I told you, the main gate was also the oldest among the 5 gates. And this bridge is also the oldest Forbidden Bridge. And every palace has its own Forbidden Bridge because when you enter the core of the palace, you have to purify your minds. You can also see this kind of behavior at a Buddhist temple. Before you enter Buddha's world, you also have to purify your minds before going in. And since this is a palace where the king stays, you have to purify your mind. And if you see over here, there is a black tortoise. And it protects the palace from the bad spirits that come from the water. And if you go over there, there is also a mythical creature. And these two mythical stone statues protect the palace. And if you see over there, there are little statues. And they are from the Chinese novel Journey to the West. They protect the palace from the bad spirits that come from the sky. And in front of the Gyeongbok Palace, there is a stone statue called a Hechi. It looks like a lion. And it protects the palace from the bad spirits that come from the earth. Thank you.
If you look here, you can see that this path is divided into 3 ways. This part is a bit higher than the rest of them. The reason these paths are divided is because that different people walk through these paths. The middle path is where the king walks. It represents the sun high up in the sky. And onto the king's left, the civil officials use this path. They represent the rising sun. And on our right, the military officials travel in this path. They represent the falling sun. This is because that the civil officials were treated better than the military officials.
We are at the main building of the Changdeok Palace. And this place was a very important place of the palace because this was the place where all the palace servants and the officials and the kings came to one place. And this place was also used as ceremonies such as coronations or meeting foreign envoys. And if you look at the ground, you can see it is very bumpy. And you could think that this is not for a palace's floor. But actually there is a very scientific fact about this floor. When it rains, the polished floor would be very slippery, so many officials would have been hurt. And it is also for the officials not to run around and be officials. And if you look over there, there is a copper ring. And as I told you, this was used as ceremonies. So there is also a copper ring over there. And they used tents to cover up all this place for only the important officials and the kings and queens. And from over to here and there are stones. These stones are called ranking stones, and it shows the officials their rank. So if you are closer to the palace, it means you are a very important person. And if you are further to the palace, it means that you are a very low-ranked official. Now let's go to the next spot inside the palace.
Inside this big building, there is a evil Iro Obongbyong behind the king's throne. Iro Obongbyong represents the king and the Joseon. That's because the sun at the Iro Obongbyong symbolized the king, the moon symbolized the queen, the 5 peaks symbolize the length of the Korea Peninsula, the water symbolized the people of the Joseon, and pine tree symbolize the faithful government officials because they are always green. Also, if you see the top of this building, you can know that there are golden dragon. That's because the golden dragon symbolizes the king. You can see that there are chandeliers and the curtains at this building. That's because this building is also built in the architecture style of Western. This building was used as King's office, but later it was also used as King's shelter. The palace is divided into two sectors. It is divided into inner palace and outer palace. Inner palace was used as king and his family's shelter, and outer palace was used as official ceremonies and events. If you see, the entrance of this building is different with other buildings inside the palace. It is similar with the hotel in these days. That's because the Emperor Sunjong used car to came here. Emperor Sunjong stayed at this palace, and his father Emperor Gojong lived at Dokseong Palace. And he used car to go to Dokseong Palace to meet his father. After he came back, his car went through this road, and Emperor Sunjong can go right away inside this building. This is image of this place and Emperor Sunjong's car. Like this, the car took him this road and stayed here. Also, inside this building, there was very beautiful paintings. However, that painting is moved to the museum of the palace. So if you go there, you can see many beautiful paintings. Thank you.
This building is called the Naksunje. It was built in 1847, and this building was originally built in the Changgyeonggung Palace, which is another palace very close from here. This building is famous for many sad royal stories, which I will talk about in just a minute. There was a big fire in 1917, and most of the buildings burned down. And the Emperor Sunjong used this place as a bedchamber. Before I talk about the sad royal stories, I would like to point out something very interesting. If you look around the building, you can see it has no colors. It's just black, white, and brown. In other buildings, we use colors called tancheon, which are colors that represent the elements of the universe. Tancheons are used in palaces and temples. Colors were very expensive back in the Joseon dynasty, so only very wealthy people could use colors. Now I would like to talk about Princess Toke, Gojong's beloved daughter. In Korea, there's a superstition that if a baby is born on his or her father's 60th birthday, they will become just like his father. And if you look in this picture, you could see that Princess Toke and Emperor Gojong look alike. Princess Toke was very smart and talented as a young girl. However, her father Gojong passed away early, and she was only left with her mother. To make things worse, the Japanese took her to Japan and made her study there. When she was 17, her mother also passed away, so she lost both of her parents at a young age of 17. She had mental diseases and was not in very good condition. She was forced to marry a Japanese earl when she was 17. This is the picture of the Japanese Earl and Princess Toke. She returned back to her home in 1962. She had spent a hard time in Japan, and she returned to this building, Naksanje. She lived here for 21 years and died in 1989. Behind this Naksanje, you could see a beautiful garden. It looks like this. If you look here, you could see a rather interesting architecture. These are actually chimneys. But why did they put chimneys on the ground? To know about this, you need to know about the Korean heating system. This is the traditional Korean heating system, ondo, and when they make a fire in the kitchen, the heat goes under floor and it heats the whole room. They put the chimneys there because it looks beautiful and it reduces the danger of fire. Thank you.